Right, okay, well, welcome back everyone after the break. Our next speaker is Fraibet Aveledo, and the name of her talk is Cross-linguistic influence of motion events construal in bilingual speakers of Spanish and English. Thank you, Fraibet.
Thank you, Jackie. Can you listen to me well?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. First, I think I don't need to go into the introduction because this is what we have been doing, particularly today. So it's similar to what Simona have done, Aline. So I'm interested in studying how learners of a second language rely on conceptualization patterns from the L1, so whether they present conceptual transfer. But additionally, I also interested in observing whether bilinguals present examples of conceptualization, for restriction of conceptualizations in their L1, okay? Here we have some evidence that suggests that. So the aims of this study are to look at how speaking to typological different languages, of course, Spanish and English, affect motion event construal in L1 and L2. So I'm looking for bi-directional effect, and whether extra-linguistic factors such as proficiency, age of acquisition, and length of residence in this L2 modulate the lexicalization patterns produced in these two languages. I also have to thank Spanos because Spanos has been part of this study that we started a long time ago. I'm not gonna describe, of course, the differences between English and Spanish because we already have discussed that. So for this study, we analyzed the descriptions of motion events by Spanish L1 speakers, L2 speakers of English, and also for comparison purposes, we analyzed Spanish monolinguals and English monolinguals. And we present here two different analyses. One analysis that has been done at the level of the verb, aiming to look at the type of motion event encoded in the main verb of the main clause, and another one at the level of the sentence that try to look at how path and manner elements are packaged within the sentence and how the type of path expressed in the stimuli, because we use trajectory and boundary crossing events in the stimuli, how these affect this packaging. I have to say that this study, this analysis of the level of the sentence is still in progress. It's not as beautifully done by Aline. So the participants were 44 native speakers of English. These are the monolinguals, 42 monolingual speakers of Spanish, 38 L1 Spanish speakers, early and late acquirers of L2 Englishes and L2. They shared socioeconomic level and educational level. The bilinguals differed in the age of acquisition. You can see here I think I can use the pointer. So you can see here the range of when these participants acquire their second language. The length of residency varies greatly as well. And we tested their English proficiency with the quick placement test. And the scores gave us that their proficiency were between advanced intermediate to highly advanced speakers. I have to say that these speakers were all living in an English-speaking country by the time they were tested, and they were recruited in United States and in UK. Oops, sorry. So the task was a verbal encoding task in which participants saw 22 silent videos of 6 seconds. We designed these videos, and 8 measured path and manner of motion. And we had 5 videos showing boundary crossing events and 3 trajectory. I know that this is an uneven and is a limitation of the study, but this trajectory, these 3 also stimuli gave us some interesting data. Regarding the procedure, you can ask me later. Okay, so here we have some examples of how we, let me see if that works, sorry. I don't know how to take, okay. So here we have a boundary crossing click. And we have here a trajectory click. So, as I said, for the analysis of the verb, we encoded, we selected only if the manner verb encoded a path, a manner, or other concepts. Other concepts, I can talk about this later, but there were 2 types of orders. Orders, if they were related to motion events. So here we had neutral verbs, deictics, and other were not related to motion events, but there were very, very few of them. Okay, so we put them for this analysis together. And we compared bilingual speakers in Spanish to Spanish monolinguals, bilingual speakers in English to English monolinguals, and calculated the extralinguistic language in each of the 2 languages produced by the bilingual speakers. For the analysis of the level of the sentence, here the aim is to do a qualitative and a quantitative analysis. As I said, this is in progress. We wanted to see how the main verb, whether it's a path or a manner, appears in combination with other path or manner concepts in the sentence, okay? Here, of course, is our concept of path, and the responses were also divided, whether they were the response to the video, the description, according to whether the video was showing a boundary crossing event or a trajectory event. So, for example, in a sentence such as una chica sale de la habitación mientras salta, which is translated as a girl exits the room while she jumps, will be first, the stimulus is a boundary crossing stimuli. Here we have main path verbs that appears with a manner. So far for this analysis, we haven't considered the type of grammatical category or the linguistic element that is used to express this concept, okay? And also, we are not considered for this analysis aspects such as source, via, and ground. So, for example, de la habitación, the room will be a source, but this is not considered in this analysis and probably in the future. So here we have the the results from the verb analysis. I want to focus on the figures, the graphs, because it's easier for us. So in number A, letter A, we have the results comparing the monolingual speakers. And as we can see, they differed in the production of path verbs, manner verbs, and other cases. Interestingly, Spanish speakers produce a lot of manner verbs, but remember that we have here 3 trajectory stimuli. And here we have the comparison between English monolinguals and bilinguals in English, and we observe that they differed in the production of these path verbs, manner verbs, and other cases. We observe a presence, of course, of a lot of past verbs and a really high presence of other cases. And I think this is explained for the lack of appropriate lexicon to express in the other language, probably manner verbs. Interestingly, in the comparison between Spanish monolinguals and bilinguals in Spanish, we observe statistical differences in the production of manner verbs. And interestingly, these bilinguals performed more as a typical Spanish speaker than the Spanish bilinguals. It could be the participants. We can discuss this also later, of course. So regarding the correlations of the extralinguistic factors, we found that when in bilinguals in English, for past verb selection, there was no correlation, but for manner, we found correlation in the three variables that were analyzed. We found then that the higher the proficiency, the higher the production of manners, the earlier the acquisition of English, the higher the production of manner, and the longer the time spent in an English-speaking country, the higher the production of manner. Okay, others were not included in this correlation because the numbers were really small. Very interesting, although we observed before that when bilinguals produce in Spanish, you remember I said, oh, they are behaving like prototypical Spanish speakers. When we analyze the extralinguistic factors, we observed effect of the variables in the speakers. So for example, regarding the past verb selection, proficiency did not show a significant correlation, but the earlier the age of acquisition, the lower the production of past verbs in Spanish. And the longer the time of residency, the lower the production of the lower the production of past verbs, sorry. And in relation to manner, we observed again that in Spanish, those who had higher proficiency produced more manner verbs. Those who had earlier age of acquisition produced more manner verbs, and those who had a longer time of residency also produced more manner verbs. So in relation to the analysis of the verbs, sorry, I'm keeping track on the time, we found a total of 1,340 clauses, and I want to, because of the time, I'm not going to analyze this in detail, but I want to explain how we did this analysis. So here what we have are all the stimuli together and then divided according to the type of stimuli. And here we have that the participants, the bilinguals in English, produced 62 sentences in which that were headed by a main past verbs. From these 62, 21% were bare past verbs, 36% were past verbs together with manner, so another manner in the sentence. So past verbs is a main past verb. And the same applies for the manner verbs. So these are sentences headed by a manner, a main manner verbs, and we observe the presence of these other particles. And we have here, we are comparing bilinguals to English monolinguals. As I said before, this is in progress. I haven't done any inferential statistic yet, so we don't know if these differences are really significant, but they can tell you a bit of the type of patterns that we are observing in these bilingual speakers. So what I think that we are observing here is that First, bilinguals compared to monolinguals are producing less verb path verbs, more path verbs with manner concept, which is of course typical from Spanish, more path verbs with other path verb and manner. And we will see that here, I will show you there is like a use of more prepositions that are not exactly that English monolinguals won't use, but it's like a kind of an exercise that these bilinguals are speakers are doing with the use of these very difficult prepositions for Spanish speakers. We observe less path verbs with other paths. Bilinguals are producing very few, but we are observing still some path verbs in trajectory stimuli. They are producing more bare manner verbs in English, which is also typical from Spanish, more typical in Spanish, less manner verbs with other manners and path. And in trajectory stimuli, we see here, we observe less production of manner verbs in combination with other manners and path. So here I have some...
Sorry to interrupt you, Fraibet. You've got 5 minutes left.
Thank you, Jackie. So here we have some interesting examples produced by these bilingual speakers in English, and we can see how they are adapting not only grammatical, the correct use of grammatical categories such as preposition, but also the presence of some of this motion construal from the other language so from Spanish to English. So look at these examples. This is, of course, a typical English, a typical Spanish construal. A girl enters in a room hoping. A man enters a room. But then we have this, a man enters in circles in a room. This is, number E is very interesting because this is the production of a sentence in a trajectory stimulus. Someone is passing down some tables in the library. This number F is also very interesting. A woman is jumping, entering through a door. So let's move now to what bilinguals did in Spanish. And in general, what I am observing is a more production, a more presence or encoding of manner concepts within the sentence. So we observe here much more double manners than in Spanish monolinguals. And again, with manner verbs, we observe less verb manners, which is also something that we will expect in Spanish, and more double manners, the presence of double manners. And in trajectory stimuli, we observe less manner verbs with path. And I'm going to come to the examples. It's true that maybe the type of stimuli that we used, in which some of the motion events were not or didn't have a clear lexical, a lexicon or a word to express a form, to express that concept, could have made this speaker to try to explain more what they were seeing. What is interesting is that there is a difference between, well, it seems, as I said, I haven't done statistics here, there seems to be an important difference in how a Spanish monolingual will do it compared to a bilingual in Spanish. So look at these examples. Number C. Una persona entra saltando en un solo pie, en una sola pierna. So a person enters jumping in one foot, in only one leg. Number E is also really interesting. Una mujer camina dando vueltas sobre sí misma, girando hacia su izquierda. We didn't find this type of examples in monolingual Spanish speakers. I translate, a woman walks, circling herself, turning to herself. So in conclusions, so far we have observed that in these bilingual speakers who are advanced intermediate and advanced learners, they showed motion event patterns of the L1 in the L2. And although L2 verb patterns are not observed in L1, when we analyzed at the level of the verb, the extralinguistic variables, we found some effect of age of acquisition, lengths of residency, not only in the L1, but also in the L2 and in the L1. In relation to the analysis of the sentences, these preliminary findings seems to be suggesting first that these bilinguals are still, in English, are still using the motion event construals from Spanish, of course, less, but we observe the presence of this L1 motion event patterns in English. We observe less path satellites, and this could be explained by the difficulties in using prepositions, English prepositions, and also, of course, as I mentioned, more verb manner verbs. But also in Spanish, we are observing a more significant description of manner concepts in these sentences. Up to what point this is an effect of the tips, this is something to be, of course, analyzed. I think that, of course, these results just open more questions, but it's interesting to see the type of productions that these speakers are giving us in these descriptions, because we can design then more specific analysis to test this hypothesis. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fraibet. That was really interesting. Thank you. So, can I invite some, there's plenty of applause. Can I invite some questions? I can't see any hands up at the moment. Janine, yes.
This
Please.
was such a great presentation, Fraibet. I just wanted to raise an issue that I think is of interest for the whole workshop, and that is this issue: to what extent is it possible for people to just pick this up, this motion event construal, by going abroad, length of residence, having a lot of experience with the language? Is that possible or not? Because in some studies you find that is possible, in other studies we don't find this. And I find it very difficult to get my head around when people can be successful with this and when they can't. I mean, we felt in the study that Jackie and Tony and I did that, at least with this boundary crossing, that it wasn't enough to just get a lot of exposure. But there may be other aspects of motion event construal that they can pick up. So I just wanted to pick your brains on where you think the issues are that we can't pick up by listening, and which things seem to be difficult.
That's a good question. Thank you. Renan, I think Renan was asking something before, Michael.
Right, yes, Renan, please go ahead with your question.
I could pick up from what Janine has just said. It occurred to me that it could possibly be something to do with the interactions that the person living in an English speaking, in this case, or in a target language community might have, like the person that is living in the place where the language is spoken, but interacts mostly with people from their own country and in their own language. and as opposed to people that kind of mingle and interact more with the natives. So yeah.
Yeah, that's something something that I also thought about when I compare, you know, the difference that we observed in the Spanish monolinguals and the bilinguals, because the Spanish monolinguals were all from Venezuela. So they are all from a similar community. They were students in my previous university, while the bilinguals are more, they were from United States, all others were from Spain, living in UK. So there was much more cultural variety in the bilinguals, definitely, than in the monolinguals. And I always ask, is it something about, you know, cultural, or is it something about the condition of bilingual speakers? So that's, yes, that's a good question. That is difficult also, yeah. That is difficult for us to tackle, no? When we are accessing these participants, you know, we ask, you know, participants that we have available to us, no?
Great, thank you.
So many varieties, so many variables were in play, right?
Yeah.
My question was actually something else. It's about the one of the examples of the Spanish bilingual productions. I think it was letter E. Una mujer camina dando vueltas en sí misma, and there was a whole bunch of details there, right? And then I was wondering if that could possibly be an interference from the task instruction, because, like, well, how do you ask them to describe what happens in the scene, right? Because if they think that they have to describe motion, they will probably pay more attention to the kinds of motion and all that stuff.
Yes, that's a good question. Remember that the way we designed this 22 clips, they had different type of motion events. So we had their causation, we have their diaxis as well. So there were only 8 from the 22 clips were showing motion event, a path and manner. However, it's true. Anyway, the instruction was really clear. Just it was saying, tell me what is happening there. Okay. So there was not, we didn't ask for description or anything like that. Anyway, intentionally, because the thing is that this study was also aiming to analyze non-language effect of language in cognition. So not only for this, and we try to design some motions that didn't have a form in the language. So that is that for these speakers, it was difficult to say, you know, running, because, you know, the design, the movement didn't have exactly a word. It was easier for English, of course, because in English, there are much more. It was really interesting. I had one of the videos was showing a person going up a stairs, but sat down and backwards. And in Spanish, we don't have, of course, any word for that. But in English, they managed to find a manner. And they were saying, someone is shuffling up the stairs, no? So the Spanish speakers needed to, these bilingual speakers needed to describe much more the manner. It's true, it could be, I accept that, it could be an effect of the design. However, why Spanish monolinguals didn't need to describe that much? So that's something that only when we do more stats, we will be able to detect.
Thank you, Fraibet. We actually have 3 more hands up, and I'm not sure that we'll have enough time for everyone, but I think Rosa Alonso is the first hand to go up. So I wonder whether we could have a question from you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, mine is not directly related to the study, and it's after analyzing your data and the evidence you have with the data. Do you think boundary crossing is more a matter of a dichotomy or a matter of a gradual salience?
I haven't analyzed that. I haven't thought about that until, today, after, seeing Michael's presentation. It could be that it's definitely not a dichotomy. Yes.
I was wondering if gradual salience is more related to the task.
What do you mean by graduate salience? What exactly?
The type of task you use provides evidence of gradual salience rather than a dichotomy. That is, that it depends more on the task than on the nature of boundary crossing.
Well, I think that the design of the clips were definitely more manner salient. Yes. So because the path that were expressed in general, they were the typical path that we observe in, out, up, down. Okay. Apart from this trajectory that we're showing some unusual patterns of trajectory of the figure. But the salient, I think that the contrast between the manner could make the speakers to pay more attention to manner than a path. However, I don't think that affect. I mean, it can affect the amount, the frequencies of total verbs used, path or manner, but not the type of element that we are observing, the type of construal that we are observing in the sentence. I don't know if that responds to your question.
I don't know. I think it's more of a theoretical question and not directly related to your data, but to the nature of boundary crossing. But we can talk about this later.
Yes.
During the workshop. Anyway, it was a very interesting talk. Thanks.
Yes,
thank you.
And a very interesting question. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I think Panos and Ludovica also had their hand up. So I hope that they will maybe contact Fraibet or put them on our Slack forum at some points in the future.